Hello everyone, welcome back to GGN. This is part 2 for this news bulletin today, Tuesday, November 6th, 2012. My website's ggnonline.com, and on YouTube you can check it out as ddarko2012, and my backup channel is ddarko2013. I post all the headlines and links in YouTube's video description, all of them, so go check them out if you're a new viewer. Okay, so we left off basically talking about Britain and our American Revolution, how we supposedly basically revolted from them, and we formed our own government by a bunch of basically Freemasons and stuff like that. And starting off here, as we previously reported, the corporate media focuses on non-issues, and political pundits basically accentuate petty political rivalries between the left and the right. And of course we know what? That Obama was related to British royalty. It came out that he was related to British royalty. And I'm not sure about Romney, but he probably is too. So they keep it. They still keep it in the bloodlines as far as the CEOs who manage the corporation. Professional spokesman, representative not of the American people, but of Fortune 500 multinational corporations and banks. Since the time of J.P. Morgan 100 years ago, the corporate financier elite saw themselves as being above government. National sovereignty is merely a regulatory obstacle that could lobby, bribe, and manipulate out of existence. Of course, threaten, blackmail too. They're good at that. In the past 100 years, the moneyed elite have gone from manipulating the presidency to now reducing the office to a public relations functionary of their collective interests. Yeah, I mean, of course, they'll just blow your freaking brains out right on TV and tell you, hey, if you don't do this, this is what you'll get. So the most powerful country on the planet today would appear to be the United States of America if you believe what you're told, but the U.S. has always been controlled from London and still is. It has never been the land of the free. The focus of the world has been on big bad America as the global villain, and that's something that I've talked about recently. While all the time the events blamed on Americans have been orchestrated by the elites of the Babylonian Brotherhood in England and elsewhere, talking about London, the apparent breakup of the British Empire and the Britain's decline on the surface as a superpower has further obscured on purpose where the real power lies. I emphasize that by London, I do not mean the British government, which is just another facade no matter who is in office. I mean, for the historical and other reasons, the majority or major operational center of the secret society web of these, call them reptile brotherhood. I don't know about all that, but either way, it goes to in London or the new Troy, and to a large extent Paris, Brussels, Rome. Of course, you could throw in the Vatican, right? Yeah, there's actually a YouTuber that made a video called The Pharaoh Show. It's a pretty good series, and he actually breaks down America. I think it's, what is it, Am or Amru, and then Ra, which we all know as Ra. And then Ka, which I guess has to do with Kabbalah, Ka, Ba, and La. So it has something to do with the living, the dead, and something in between. I don't know all of it, but go in there and check it out from the Pharaoh Show, and that's how he relates it. So, you know, the whole thing about Christopher Columbus discovering America is ludicrous, which it is. It says here, Virginia, it is said, was named after Elizabeth I, a completely misnamed Virgin Queen. It is far more likely, however, given the background, that it was named after the virgin goddess of ancient Babylon, Queen Semiramis, and her mirror in Egypt, Isis. And they actually go into the whole Francis Bacon connection as the early settlers. They actually talk about the Vatican and some of these books that were not destroyed. But yeah, it was one of the things I remember from, I think, 4 or 5 years ago was this connection or this theory about Sir Francis Bacon and the Vatican, how they had knowledge about America, you know, way before even Christopher Columbus was mentioned, and that it was considered the new Atlantis. It goes on and it says that the financial and land ownership of America was assured from the start with the formation of the Virginia Company set up by King James. Sorry, I think I said King George. King James I in 1606. James knighted Francis Bacon and anointed him to many important positions, saying that under James' patronage, the Templars, Rosicrucians, and other secret societies joined forces under one name, which they considered Freemasonry. It says the Virginia Company still exists under other names and it still controls the United States. They were at the forefront. The Freemasons were at the change from overt to covert rule by Britain of North American continent. The transition is known by history as the American War of Independence. The Brotherhood agenda for America was encapsulated in Francis Bacon's work, The New Atlantis. So there you go. Published in 1607, in which the invisible college of elite intellectuals dictated events. It says that one of the leading Freemasons of the British colonies in America was Benjamin Franklin, who is still revered as the founding father who believed in freedom for this people, or for the people. His face can be seen on the $100 note, and even Christian Patriot movement, which has understood many elements of the global conspiracy, has bought the idea that Franklin would have been on their side. I beg most strongly to disagree that Franklin was an asset of British intelligence, a Satanist, stalwart of Babylonian Brotherhood, and a sacrificer of children. It goes on here and it says that, in short, the Babylonian Brotherhood via the Freemasons controlled and manipulated both sides of the American War for Independence or the Revolutionary War, just as they do in every other war. As historians have documented, the British military and naval operation during the War of Independence was incredibly inept. It wasn't that the colonies won the war, it was that the British chose to lose it. I've actually heard a theory about the Confederacy, the Confederation of States, actually being funded, along with the Union, by outside sources, including the Rockefellers and those in Britain, these families. And it would make sense because it was all about expanding the empire, the New Atlantis, which was the Union. So the Confederation of States had to lose. No matter what they did, they were going to lose. And not only did they do that, but they got rid of the Indian problem while all the fighting was going on. British have invaded 9 out of 10 countries, so look out, Luxembourg. British has invaded all but 22 countries in the world in its long and colorful history. New research has found some of them are Bolivia, Paraguay, Chad, Mali, Ivory Coast, Congo, also Mongolia, Uzbekistan, Kyrgyzstan, Tajikistan, Belarus, and Sweden. Incursions by British pirates, privateers, or armed explorers have also been included, provided they were operating with the approval of their government. So, yeah, they're talking about, you remember when the Knights Templar were kind of going more covert and took to the seas, the high seas, they flew the Skull and Bones flag. And these, quote, armed explorers were there to go and exploit cultures, extract all of the ancient knowledge that they had attained, all their high priestesses and their holy men, and kill them. Take their knowledge, use that, incorporate it into their own great work, and then kill off the people, mostly the men, break up the families, and it's exactly what they're doing right now to the United States. You know, I actually was talking about that just this past weekend with somebody about, I bet they had a 500-year plan back in like the 1500s, 1500s to now, where they were going to basically exterminate, or as I put it, the 2 C's: contain and cull the indigenous populations, because they were a threat, because of that knowledge, because they were tribalistic and they stuck together. And it was done slowly and methodically, and that's why it kind of kicked off around the 1400s and stuff like that. And that's what these armed explorers were doing. They were initiating this policy of culling and containing the indigenous populations. The thing I noticed about white societies is that they're they're kind of left alone, right? You're kind of left to fend for yourself. Whereas tribes, they stick up for each other, they protect each other and look out. Whereas the white societies, you could be left out to hang, and the only thing that you have, of course, is the law. So you better have a lot of money to be able to protect yourself. And segueing to the Middle East, is Britain arming oppressive regimes in the Middle East? David Cameron is touring Gulf states in a bid to patch up relations and boost British arms sales, but critics say he's helping to prop up repressive regimes. The trip comes just a month after Saudi Arabia was insulted by a parliamentary inquiry into the country's support for possible human rights abuses and military assistance to Bahrain's monarchy. It's so funny. Saudi Arabia was insulted that they're a dictatorship, just like other countries such as Britain and the U.S. Qatar, UAE requests 7.6 billion clams in missile defense, says the United States. They've asked to buy more than 7.6 billion in U.S. missile defense technology, the Pentagon said. Going on, you have Turkey asking for Patriot missiles and stuff like that. Also, Egypt possibly going nuclear. I was just covering that last week. Syria, and Saudi Arabia getting help from Pakistan to go nuclear. Syria's opposition groups convene in Qatar. Can they build a unified front of terrorists, right? Yeah, see, they're talking about overhauling its structure and representation to be more democratic. But it's going to be just like Libya, where the Libyans that helped overthrow Gaddafi are not getting... Well, they presented their line of government, and the West didn't like it. There wasn't enough pro-Western people in there, so then, it was basically shot down, and they came back with it again. So I find it kind of funny that you see this article, Syria could turn into the new Somalia. Well, Syria's already turned into Libya, and Somalia is a result of imperialism along the lines of England and Germany trying to invade Somalia, and eventually they couldn't, so they divided it in half so they can take the resources from them. But yeah, it could turn into that. I mean, it's well known that this is going to spill over and create regional conflict. I mean, it already has with refugees and stuff like that, and all the international foreign mercenaries and terrorists are flooding into Syria and wreaking havoc across the borders. But who knows? Maybe they will turn it into a Somalia, Again, the same guy that made a Pharaoh show, he made a good point, which is, look at the countries that are living like this, and those are the ones that are resisting this global elite. Those that are right on board, like Switzerland and Germany and the U.S., they get a lot of these little goodies. But if you don't, then you get like what they have in Afghanistan. 5 wounded as rival militias battle in Libya. And, so just like the terrorists that are in Syria, in the, quote, militias, Free Syrian Army, they're fighting each other, right? That's what we were just talking about. Syrian rebels fighting each other over border crossings. Have the same thing going on in Libya. So you can call it a failed state or whatever. They're trying to get a regime change. It's not holding up, kind of like in Afghanistan, arming the opposition. That's a policy that just doesn't work. It makes it worse. So yeah, it's interesting because they're being involuntarily pushed towards a stateless society. And somebody said, well, this is anarchy. This is what you want. Darko, you want a stateless society? You want anarchy? And it's like, with no laws? And it's like, well, no, you can still have law and stuff like that. But these people didn't do it voluntarily. This wasn't a voluntarily transition into a stateless society. So, like Somalia, this is a result of a failed regime change. Funny how they like to twist it and call it, like Somalia, a failed state. It's a failed regime change. Syria's Kurds, civil wars within a civil war. I've been talking about this recently, about the border clash between Syrian rebels and the Kurds. Clashes, the Kurdish leaders claim the deployment violated an unwritten agreement by the rebels to stay out of the Kurdish areas. Also in Turkey, you have Kurds that are protesting the Turkish government, actually a hunger strike. Some of them are actually dying. Syrian rebels root for Romney in hopes of U.S. military intervention. So desperate for foreign intervention, some rebels, as if they didn't have it already, some rebels say they hope that the party that brought on the Iraq War might also bring America to Syria. They're already there. It's just a different flavor under Obama. Somalia to get first female foreign minister. So the global elite that are mostly white males like to, like I said, the Freemasons and that, they like to use minorities, they like to use gays, they like to use women, females, to put in as a figurehead to block basically who's really pulling the strings, which is them, for humanitarian missions and stuff like that. Oh, they're so compassionate. But really it's about going in there and getting their oil. And you can be rest assured that Al-Shabaab is going to be gunning for her. And just like Ambassador Stevens, who armed the people that killed him in Libya, she'll be left to be killed and mutilated as well, if it serves their purpose, of course, right? Ooh, we got to get into Somalia. They killed a female foreign minister. Sick. We have IDF chief says Syrian conflict might become ours. Well, you think? You're making it yours, just like Turkey. They say the IDF is ready for a moment Israel comes under fire. Of course, if that doesn't happen, they'll just go ahead and dress up as Syrian soldiers and fire on themselves. These guys aren't that creative. They're not that smart. They're actually just going off a Brookings Institute document, policy for regime change, which involved the Israeli border and Golan Heights area, saying that there would be a conflict and they would have to do something about it if it spilled over. Syrian tank center demilitarized Israeli frontier. Yeah, the 3 Syrian tank center, the demilitarized zone in the Golan Heights. Yeah, they were probably chasing the rebel terrorists. Never mind, all the spillover going on in other countries with the refugees and whatnot, the violence. But now this marks the most serious spillover, serious turmoil to date because it's Israel. See, Israel complained to the UN, just like when they violated Lebanon's airspace every single day for the last year. But when they happen to violate Israel's airspace, they shoot them down. Thank you.